Mr. Karanjawala really doesn't need an introduction, so I won't waste time to do that. Mr. Karanjawala is very eminently qualified to talk about the future of law and the future of legal services. And he'll stick to three aspects of it. One is specialization. What should one specialize in as one grows? Or what does one specialize in to grow? Second is technology, because it's impacting every domain. It is definitely impacting the domain of legal services and the legal services delivery. And third is about branding and legal advertising. That's banned in India. What should be the way forward? So, Mr. Ryan Karanjawala, your opening comments. I'll be the filler. You're the main show.
So, Anurag, I have a small confession to make. Yesterday, when you told me that, look, why don't we just do a snapshot interview, you and me, and why don't you speak on the future of legal services and the future of law? I said yes in my slightly overconfident, overeager way. And then when I went back and I reflected on the topic, I said, this topic has both the width and the depth of the ocean. Because, I mean, you can speak endlessly on the future of law, endlessly on the future of legal services. So I said, let me take just 3 bites of the apple and give my predictions for the future and we'll see 15 years later whether they're right or whether they're wrong. So the first is the aspect of specialization. Now, I joined the bar in 79. I think Pinky joined it somewhere around the same time or a little later. And Pinky will also recollect this, and Pinky will also remind us that when I joined the bar in 79, if you went to the Supreme Court at 10:15 in the morning and you stood on the balcony looking down at the car park, there were hardly 10 to 15 cars parked in the car park. Today, if you were to go there, the car park is chock-block full, and then people would be willing to park another 4,000 cars outside if there was space. So what does that show? That shows that the law as a profession in real numbers has grown and grown exponentially. Part of the reason, of course, is that today lawyers are better paid than they were when we first began. Part of the reason is that with unemployment as large as it is, what people say to themselves is, instead of getting an MBA and then waiting in a queue for a job and trying your best again and again repeatedly to get a job, take a professional degree, and worst comes to worst, if you can't join someone, you'll start your own shop, and somehow on the other you'll eke out a living. So this being the situation we find for ourselves today is what? That there are thousands and thousands and thousands of lawyers, each very much like the other. Someone a little better, someone a little worse, but they're all broadly in the same way. Now, the only way to progress then is to specialize. And I've seen this in the years that have gone by, that all the people who specialized in a particular law when it began, then suddenly found themselves on the fast track. So a lot of people who, for example, went early into the telecom space have today found themselves extremely well placed in lucrative terms, they're doing well, they're happy. So I think one of the things and one of the ways which we have to look forward is that increasingly in the future, if you want to do better, you'll have to get narrower. You can't be a generalist, you'll have to be a specialist.
He's looking at my body size and that's what his comment is. You mean law? Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Like wherever I talk of Karanjawala and company, typically everyone says, oh, they are the best in litigation, or they're,
I wish. So anyway, so that's one. Specialization, according to me, is the way of the future. And for example, as we in our firms also, now we try to break it into silos and have the same people do the same thing again and again and again so that they get better at the job. So that's the first bite of the apple. The second is the transformation of technology. Now again, in order to look at the future, let me just first look at the past. I told you, 79 I joined the bar. And I joined a firm called P.H. Parekh & Company. Now Parekh & Company was a firm with a huge amount of work, a lot of which came out of Bombay and a lot of which came out of Gujarat, because that was the way it was. And in those days, we used to interact a lot with the junior counsels of the Bombay Bar. And all the junior counsels of the Bombay Bar used to have something what they call their little pocket diary. So what would that be? So when they researched on a particular topic, generally working up a particular brief, if they found an esoteric proposition of law, what they would do is they take out their diary and note it down. Some would codify it, some would put it in their own code, only they could read it in case someone snatched the diary, and so on and so forth. And a lot of them prided themselves on this little pocket book of theirs. I remember Ashok Desai used to have this red book, this big, and he'd frequently just look at it and then say, just get this case from this place on this proposition, and so on. What did technology do? In the 30 years that have gone, 30, 40 years that have gone by today, all you have to do is to punch in the proposition and pop, 5 answers come. So with the advent and with the transformation of technology, what has happened? 60% of the junior counsel bar's work and the junior counsel's work has evaporated because everybody is almost as good a researcher as the next person with the advent of the computer, with the advent of the internet. So now, having seen what has happened in the past, how do you look at the future? Well, one thing I predict, and that is that 8 to 10 years from now, I have a friend called Karan Kalia. He works in something called Legit Quest. And they're already working on something called predictive technology. So what happens is, and I think 8, 10 years from now, this is what will happen. People will come with a case to you and say, this is my case. You'll be able to program it into a computer, which will then give you within a certain margin of error. What are the chances of your winning? How long will it take or losing? How long will it take before you win or lose? And probably as the machine gets better, what is the cost that you will have to incur to achieve the end result? So I see for the future for people like Manjari, for people like Hemant, a huge change because pre-trial litigation will get an aspect that it never had. There will be genuinely an endeavor to understand and see as to whether particular litigation should be pursued or not pursued. And if this happens, you will suddenly probably find, as the years go by, that a large part of potential litigation has either evaporated or has got settled out of court. Because with this tool that people have, time's up.
No.
With this,
Who said? That's old.
With this tool,
I have no specs, so I can't
with
see.
this tool that people have, you will be able to conduct your litigation strategy much better.
Sure.
Now, let's come to the last thing.
And I would say he's talked about legal advertising, but I would say business development. I'll
No,
broaden it a little bit.
no, I'm talking about legal advertising. Okay. So let me deal with that subject. According to me, in the next 12 to 14 years, it will become mandatory for lawyers to disclose information. Now let me tell you what is the situation today. Supposing, Anurag, you were to come into my office and say, Ryan, here's the case, I want you to file it. So what would I do? And it happens all the time. I look at you and say, Anurag, media mogul.
Baron. It's all Baron.
Baron.
Okay.
Fat cat.
Okay.
And I could charge you for the same work that I have just quoted another person who walked out half an hour away from my office, twice the rate. And nobody would be the wiser because clients have no
By the
way.
way, I always thought you'd never charge me for anything. And last year you even made a
It's an
proposition.
example. It's an example.
Okay. Thank you.
So, and then what would happen was that, then what would happen was that at the moment, the practice of law is opaque. Nobody really knows how much people charge because even within our own firms, we have different charge out rates to different clients. Nobody is really able to contrast one lawyer with another because nobody really knows much about them. I predict that, say, 10, 15 years down the road, the law will mandate a situation where if a client comes to you with, say, a merger and acquisition case, you will be required to disclose to him, one, how many such cases has your firm done in the last 2 years? I'm just giving this as an example. Two, what were the costs at the hourly bill out rate that you charge different clients for that particular kind of work? What was the level of your success in in that kind of work? So that the litigating public, the client, which is at the end of the day the most important ingredient of the whole system, has a much better understanding of what is happening in the law. When you go to a lawyer today, you go in blind. I mean, he says, I'm fantastic. And you say, yeah, but he's got a big office, it looks good, he's charging a high fee, he must be good. But there is no real other way. And then a little bit for the very well-known lawyers, a little bit of word of mouth. The time will come over a period of time when instead of saying, no, you can't legally advertise, and by advertising I don't mean getting up in a movie and saying I'm fantastic. What I mean is a situation where larger and larger amounts of information needs to be necessarily disclosed to the client. So that's my 3 bites of the apple.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for making it futuristic and relevant. We'll take 2 questions if there are any questions. If not, I'll ask. Any questions anybody wants to ask Mr. Ryan Karanjawala? Question?
Sure, ask.
Yeah, Mr.
Oh,
Mohit
boy.
Saraf wants to ask.
No.
Take this, take this mic. Take this mic. And be little.
I think my question, I think I agree with most of your thing, and I would clearly believe whether it takes 10 years or it takes 20 years, there has to be a much more transparency. And also there has to be accountability. Today, lawyers are not accountable. If you see today, some of the lawyers...
No, he's talking about the system. I'm going to agree with him fully. Just
I tell you one thing. I remember being on a matter with an international client and says, Mohit, if this has happened in the UK, there would be bar council issues. That you take the brief, you get briefed, and you don't show up. And you try to chew more than what you can digest. So I would say, really, what you said on technology all works very well. But there is so much of discretion. And there is, I think before that we discussed about so much of gray area of law. I would say, therefore, predicting all these things will become very difficult because it depends on how did the lawyer get briefed properly, how did he argue, what did the judge think about it, and then what the judge thought about the gray areas. And that is really where I feel the challenge is.
You're right. And now let me deal with both aspects of what you said. So this particular person is already working in the area of artificial intelligence to see as to how correct he is in predicting the outcome of a particular case. Obviously, there will be situations where the law is fuzzy. And that will also be predicted and say, well, we're unable to give you our opinion on this. But there will be many cases which they will say, this is settled, you have to win, you can't lose unless you really mess up, and so on. So that's one aspect of it. That's the whole point of artificial intelligence, that it sort of sees things in a way that we don't see today. On the aspect of accountability, you're 100% right. For example, I mean, in most jurisdictions internationally, all lawyers, one of the largest overheads is not so much the rentals that they have to pay, but the insurance they have to carry. Because internationally, all lawyers, all legal firms carry huge insurances because one mistake and there will be multi damages. For example, and I'll give you one advent of what that is happening. For example, today you have had over the last 1.5, 2 years, the system of the virtual hearing. And I told some of my counsel friends, whose names I won't repeat, but I told them, I said, you guys don't realize, but today clients are much, much more watchful of what is happening than they were in a non-virtual system. And I'll give you the reason why. You go into the High Court or you go into the Supreme Court, the counsel is right there, the client is way at the back. The counsel jumps up, raises his hand twice, says something, says 2 things, the other side jumps in, everyone jumps out, and you come out. The client really has no idea of what is argued. Today, though it's not allowed, a lot of clients are just quietly tape recording everything you said. And then they go over and they sit at night and then they say, but sir, ye to ye bhi nahi bola, ye to ye bhi nahi bola. I've had this situation. You know, people have said, but sir, but he didn't say that. No, it goes on like that. So we are increasingly entering into an area of judicial accountability in the sense that lawyers will have to be far more upfront. Lawyers will have to be far more careful, and the ability to be opaque won't be there. Also, I mean, abroad it's unheard of that if you have accepted a particular assignment, you choose not to land up because you're in another court. I mean, that there'd be just molten damages. I mean, in 2 court cases, their 5 years of income would be wiped out. So things are changing and things will evolve. And even within countries, things will change and things will evolve.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you, Mr. Saraf, for asking the right question. The last question from the gentleman here.
Vice Chancellor.
There's one more question, so we'll get Manjari to also ask. Yes. Yes, sir. Mr. Rajkumar, of course, I have young children who have to go to college. Of course, yes.
Yeah.
You'll get the floor. You won't only get a question.
Okay.
Yes, so in fact, it's a very lucid, reading into the future that Ryan has made, and I've worked with him, so I know his, eye for a detail. I just want to point out on one last element of it about disclosure of fees, whatever disclosures and transparency you expect to come in. Now, where we stand today, as of today, the Bar Council of India and the law itself, even shaking it a little bit is almost an impossibility. We have a whole lot of issues we've been working on through SILF, on right to advertise, or even code of conduct for law firms, LLP to be recognized, a whole long list of issues. Having said that, when you talk about disclosures and transparency, are you looking at regulatory oversight going forward, law changing altogether, or alternately,
I'll tell you.
or
See,
or alternately, some kind of a self disclosure
Regulating.
mechanism by way of
Self-regulating.
rankings or accreditations or something. So that was what I.
So my answer is that I don't have a clear answer. I frankly don't know how or which way it will happen. It may happen because somebody legislates. It may happen because the bar councils feel. It may happen because of a lot of clients get together and say, okay, look, I mean, this is ridiculous. Wherever we go, we get a different fee quote. And then I'm told that he charged my friend much less than he charged me and things like that. And so slowly, over a period of time, with any large body, there already is in the law, there comes in self-regulation. And one of the things that will first come up, people will say, look, you should actually, and it's also a way of the competent standing out. So if you've done well in a particular field in the last 2 years, you say, look, these are the cases I've argued. This is what I have charged. And you can even put it on your website, or you can go ahead, and slowly things will evolve. Nobody can predict how, when, what. I mean, and certainly I have no crystal ball. But this is the broad direction in which I see the world moving, especially the legal world. Because today in India, and frankly, we are a very, very lucky nation as far as the lawyers are concerned, because our top lawyers probably earn more than any top lawyer anywhere in the world. I mean, Mohit has an international practice. Other people have, Hemant and all deal with international counsel. They'll tell you that, my God, your counsels charge so much. And I remember Henry Kravis once came to me and he said, what are your views on foreign firms? And I said, I'm against them. And he said, why? What's the reason? And I said, when you have a monopoly, why lose it? And he said, I can't argue with that. So today, we are very lucky. I mean, our generation is a generation which has suddenly just sort of boomed, I mean, I often jokingly tell some of my friends that Jorbagh, Sundarnagar and Golf Links is going to be called Niti Bagh 2. Because all the houses that are being purchased, they are being purchased by lawyers. So suddenly, this is the time, our time has come, lawyers' time has come, we're all doing well, we're all blessed. But it won't remain unregulated forever. Sooner or later, there will be change and there will be a certain sort of equalization. Like in London today, there is no superstar. There are 25 superstars. And there are specialists. There are people who read everything. I mean, and so we will... Welcome, Lalit. So we will have a situation where things evolve in this particular way. you had a question.
Yep. C. Rajkumar and then Ms. Manjari.
Thank you, Mr. Karanjawala, for those fascinating reflections. My question is that from the time I went to law school in Delhi University in 1994, when most of my classmates were children of lawyers or judges, and when we admit students today in our law school, when most of the students are first generation lawyers, there is a dramatic transformation of the legal profession, and I see it every day. But one of the things that continue to dominate the legal profession, both corporate as well as others, and particularly the litigation bar, is the fact that the early years are a matter of great struggle for people to come into and rise in the profession. This has discouraged very bright young graduates to enter the litigating bar and end up becoming, corporate lawyers. Nothing wrong in it. My question to you is, as a distinguished member of the bar, while many litigators and lawyers, senior counsels, judges lament about the fact that the new generation law graduates only end up doing corporate law firms and in-house counsel, the reality is the litigating bar has not democratized the legal profession. How do we instill faith in young people and create opportunities for them so that even first generation law graduates can choose to become a litigator and that support system is possible for them in the early years?
So let me share with you something. I have a friend called Navroz Sirvai. His father was the constitution expert, H.M. Sirvai. And it was said of him, is that for me? It was said of him that for the first 7 years, when he was in Jamshedji Kanga's chamber, he never got a brief. Fortunately today, Lalit remembers when he joined, how difficult it was for people to make an early mark. Lalit was one of the more successful firms Delhi has seen in an early firm. So yes, the road is hard. People will have to struggle because nobody is going to come. It's like a doctor, it's like a surgeon. Nobody's going to come to you on the first day unless you have some tried and tested record. It's just how things are. The easy way is to join the air-conditioned office, join the general counsel, or just go ahead and join a corporate firm. There you get trained because they're part of a team. Litigation is more individualistic. It is certainly harder. I mean, I was fortunate. I joined Praveen Parekh. He kept us busy throughout. God was very kind to me, more than I deserved, and somehow things have gone our way. But a lot of people, far cleverer than me and far more knowledgeable, haven't done so well. It is a reality of life, and that's what it is.
I don't know enough about law or anything, but I can say that like in cricket, Dhoni came from a small town and made it on his own, no godfather, not from the Bombay Gymkhana circuit. I think at some stage that will happen in law. I am not qualified enough to comment when, but it'll happen.
I'll say one more thing. In your own statement, which you rightly said, and because you've been a vice chancellor, you have an idea of things, and you know, you have the pulse of the student. You're right. In the early days, most people who came in were not first generation lawyers. Today, as you yourself say, you see a lot more people coming in who are first generation lawyers. So they're coming in obviously because either this is an easier field to earn money in, or they feel that they have a better chance than they would have had 25 years ago.
Absolutely. Last question from Manjari ji before you, and then we'll get into the next session. We're already late.
I'll keep it very short. And this was to the earlier part of your discussion when you talked about how in artificial intelligence and predictive analysis is going to change the game. And I just want to resonate. It's not a question. I just resonate with what you said because we can see it already. I mean, as organizations, we are in throes of digital transformation, and discuss this? I mean, everyone would think that you would look at a business, a supply chain thing, or a production thing, which would lend itself to artificial intelligence. But I'm telling you, we are looking at it very actively in my company, even on the legal side, to see how would you look at, if you have litigation, if you can automate it, you can digitize your data
Correct.
on
Correct.
litigation,
Correct.
you can create predictive analysis, you can do the data dump is going to lend itself to analysis which can tell you what kind of cases did an organization get? Where do customers litigate most often? What are those specific areas where you find cases coming in more? Therefore, then can you go back to your service teams or your sales teams and educate them better? Can you improve your service in a particular way which will stop that kind of litigation or reduce that litigation to a certain
correct.
degree? So I think that is going to be the new age of legal services or work that we will see going forward. And of course, litigation will
Anurag,
always be there.
If I can just come in, since Hemant is also in the room, Manjari is there. To answer your
Mr.
question.
Amar Sundaram is also there.
Yeah, to answer your question, one of the areas where the change may come from, one of the pressure points in changing the legal system will be the whole body of general counsel. General counsels today, and I've always said this, the difference between being instructed by an individual client and a corporation is that because of the general counsel, because of his team, instructions are much easier to get, we are much better prepared, and so on. Now, one of the pressure points in the change in the legal system could well be the system of general counsels who come forward and tell their clients, sorry, before I come to you, I need to understand this. So the system of general counsel in the years to come also, I feel, will have a very, very important role to play in the future. I remember a friend of mine, Bairam Vakil, he's once told me, he said, the general counsel of GE sat on the board with Jack Welch.
I remember a conversation with Ryan 3 years back before, and he told me the same story. And
He said, the general counsel of GE sat on the board with Jack Welch. If Jack Welch wanted to do something and the general counsel said no, it couldn't be done. I have always told all my industrial friends, I said, all of you make one fundamental mistake. I said, you will spend 1 crore, I won't take the name of the council, but I've seen them spend it, 1 crore for 1 day to take a council out of town. But you won't invest 5 or 7 crores a year to have a good general counsel. And that is really your conscience keeper. That is the person who takes the ship to the safe port. Because the general counsel has to ultimately take the responsibility if anything goes wrong legally for a firm.